Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Revere End Podcast. Today, I'm yet again joined by my co-host Billy Amform. Billy, how are you doing?
Yeah, much better for 3 points. I think this is actually the first time we're doing a podcast following a victory, I believe. So
First time ever, yeah.
yeah, so it's nice to know that we're not that much of a sort of bad luck charm. But no, I'm good. I'm very pleased with the performance we saw. So
Well, me and Billy are recording this shortly after our post-match reaction, which we recorded for Norwich Talk. So if you want to kind of get of our initial short reaction, you can go check that out on Norwich Talk YouTube channel. But this is going to be kind of a more in-depth kind of view, dissecting everything in the game from individual performances and also looking ahead to Preston at home, which is our next game coming up this Saturday. So let's just kind of get into it, Bill. Let's kind of look at the team selection. So in terms of the team itself, did you feel like there was any surprises in there? Do you feel like there was any changes that you'd make personally from obviously now the game's gone on, we can kind of say in hindsight that maybe some players should or shouldn't have played, but from the initial team selection, did you feel like it was quite far off, or did you feel like it was the right team?
no, it was probably the right team. I didn't really have too many qualms with it. I think we done our preferred 11. Mine was maybe a
Preferred.
little bit more bold than yours, but that's how we do it around here. So, um, not a surprise really to see that back four. It would have been interesting to see sort of who's higher. Well, let me rephrase that. Who's sort of like above each other in terms of McCallum and Quintilla. I think we neither of us really had that much of an idea. Quintilla is obviously the more experienced one, but he's the one on loan, so we know how Farker works with loan players. Um, it was a lot of relief, I suppose, to sort of see Ollie skip in there because we weren't too sure. We sort of presumed he would play, but we presumed, you can never really presume too much with Farker.
No.
So I was fairly pleased. We obviously initially thought that Todd would be in a 10, which it soon sort of became apparent that actually he was starting off on the right. And we'll get into Todd's performance because I think me and you were both quite pleased with how he played.
Surprised almost as well.
Yeah, that's
Not that
probably, yeah.
yeah, not
He
in like a
wasn't a
bad
standout
way
player.
surprise, but I think it
No.
was more so just, I don't know if you want to touch on it now, or you kind of want to have a little kind of chat about the team in general before we kind of go into Todd's individual performance. Maybe it's probably worth doing that because we're going to kind of cover everyone. I guess like one thing I just want to touch on with the team selection, which made me so surprised, was how it just kind of told me even more how, I guess, the strength and depth of our squad. Like when you feel like players like Mumba, who started the other day and played fantastic against Luton, couldn't even get into the side. You've got, I know he come back from international duty, some of the players, but Daniel Sinani and Jakob Lungi Sorensen, like these players which we're kind of talking about being in the first team, and they couldn't even make the bench. So
Mm.
it's nice to, and I didn't even really notice. That's the thing. Like we still had such a strong bench, you wouldn't really notice that you're missing like 3 to 4 to 5 new signings as well. So I think that's the really nice thing for me, is that it's really highlighting how deep our squad is, and that if we were to get an injury, for example, like last year, I'd feel pretty confident in pretty much every position that we would be able to kind of cater for and cope. But I mean, what do you think about that, Bill? Did you kind of get that kind of feeling that, like, okay, it's unlucky and unfortunate that some players don't get to obviously play and whatnot, but did you feel like the depth was clear as to how kind of strong our squad is this year?
No, 100%. I mean, it's no secret sort of the size of the squad we have currently. Whether that will change in due course, I expect it has to. In all honesty, like there's no way we can have a squad anywhere near the size of sort of 30 numbers. Um, I think we're probably all still expecting another star player to leave in terms of an
Yeah.
asset. So I wouldn't expect sort of Godfrey, Aaron's, Todd, and Emmy all to leave. Whether there's anything to read into Emmy's recent admission, I don't know. The club is sort of playing it as like he needs he needed some time off with his family and all that sort of stuff. So we're not going to sit here and read too much into that. But I thought Todd, like we said, Todd played really well. I think, yeah, you talk about the depth. There's going to have to be some hard decisions made because Daniel Sinani, I can't see getting into the side at the moment unless there's an injury crisis like there was last year. So whether he stays or whether, you know, that's he requires a loan move will yet to be seen. I think there's players like Sorensen and stuff were sort of deliberately kept at Colney to build on their fitness, because somebody like Sorensen obviously didn't get the minutes in the international break that Farke would have hoped he would have. So that was obviously like an active decision to ensure that. Norwich need to trim the squad. There's no doubt about it. You can talk about the key players, but for me, that if Norwich have Emi Buendia and if they have Todd Cantwell in their side, then they're going to be a stronger side for it. I'm not entirely sure they're going to be a stronger side with the likes of Stiepermann and Vrancic, and even the players that Farke has omitted himself from the team, and in Tom Tribal, Mark Leitner and Josip Dermic. I think there's 6 or 7 that need to be gone, which is going to be a far harder task than getting rid of somebody like Emi Buendia, because there'll be a lot more suitors, you know, and I don't know what they're planning with somebody like Vrancic, because for me, Tim Closer and Alex Tettey, I can see why they're in the side, or in the squad, sorry, because worst comes to worst, if we do have an injury crisis, like, it's not bad backup. Like, say both Skip and Sorensen are injured, being able to bring Alex Tettey in isn't by any means a bad option. And whilst Tim Closer hasn't been great, for him to be sort of like your 5th or 6th choice centre half, considering where we were last season, isn't really that bad. So I don't really see like players like Tim Closer and Alex Tettey being an issue. What I do wonder where the Stiepermanns, where the Vrancic fit into all this, because I think you've got to be brutal. Like, I don't see the point in them. Like, if you're wanting Vrancic and Stiepermann to be in the side, it's based on sort of previous achievements and accolades, and Norwich need to move on from that, I think.
Well, I think what you got to remember is that you look at a player like Tim Closer and Alex Tettey, and you can kind of keep them in the rotation or at least in the squad because they've only got like 1 year left on their contract, which, you know, or maximum 2 years left on their contract, which is something you can, I guess, kind of, you know, you reach that point where you kind of mutually go, well, look, this is probably going to be it, but we still need you to play a role, and there's less expectation on the player to actually play a bit more because they know the kind of the contract is going to end at the end of the season. Whereas with a player like Stiepermann, who signed like a 4-year deal or something last year, and then you got Vrancic who signed another 3-year deal. You know, you've got like 3 or 4 years on these players. That's going to add a lot of value. Okay, their contract's been halved because of the 50% pay cut, which is good, but at the same time, we don't know how ludicrous they made it. You know, they could have made it something like 60K and then it cut down to 30, and 30 is still, you know, a lot. But if they're going to have a 50% clause in their contract, with us being pretty much favourites in a way to go down when we first went up, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys were still on more money than what they were on when they went up. So there's definitely been an increase in wage and an increase in duration of their contract. So I think it's going to be, that's the reason why it's going to be so much harder. Like a Josip Djimic, I can't remember the exact amount, like whether it was like a 2-3 year deal or whatever we signed him on, but like the between 30, which is more realistic, to 50K a week or whatever was said in the Premier League, you know, that's a lot of money to kind of then barter with other teams and, you know, and try and kind of negotiate with. So
yeah. Just to intersect that, I don't think I've never really bought this side. Like, Norwich I think Norwich in a really good financial position, in all honesty. Like, because if not, why would they be able to recruit X amount of players before they've made any decisions on the star assets? So I think Norwich are all right, and like, I don't think they're obviously, worst comes to worst, if these players have to stay, then they obviously can deal with it financially, but. Yeah, there's no secret. Like, Norwich need to trim the squad, and what we've learned is the players that are more pivotal in Farke's thinking, players that maybe just aren't involved. I think that if you look at the bench, what was evident was Farke's key priority was to be able to cover a number of areas on the pitch using just 6 outfield players, which I think is where Mumba struggled to get in, because you're looking at it going, well, if we put Rupp in there, he can cover 2 or 3 positions. Whether you think that's to a high standard or not is another matter, but Norwich evidently, or Farke evidently, made that decision, and I think that is the right decision. How many minutes now McCallum and Mumba both get maybe does raise other questions, because I can't see either of them getting in the side unless there's an injury, and how many really over the last 2 or 3 years injuries have our wing backs had. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to I don't want to sort of like tempt fate, but I don't know.
Well,
I don't know what you think.
I think for Ballymumba, as we'll kind of talk about later when we talk about individual performances, I think Ballymumba would have been brought in with the knowledge that he'd be lucky to kind of see any kind of first team football, as opposed to being nailed on for any kind of time, because I think it's so clear that Max Aarons is one of the best assets that we have at the club, and again, we'll kind of talk about his performance in a moment. I think on the other side, however, I do definitely think that's going to be a very kind of rotational one. If you're looking at like a couple of games in a week and you've got two players that are equally as good and can kind of facilitate that role, maybe with McCallum being a bit more attacking, you could maybe play him a bit more often at home. I think again, as we'll kind of talked about the unknown bonuses personally, or surprise kind of attributes that Quintia had. It was nice to see him play, because I didn't really understand too much of what he's good at. I think when I was on Norwich Talk, recording a video with Stuart Hodge and Ben Ambrose, we actually found out that on like kind of transfer market ratings, like his downsides were pace, passing, shooting, and crossing. And when you look at that as downsides, you think, well, what can he do, kind of thing. So,
I mean, the thing is, you talked about like the rotation. I'm not sure like what evidence there is to suggest that Norwich will rotate their side this year. Like, it is a condensed calendar, but Norwich now don't have the League Cup to worry about. They're probably not going to be bothered about the FA Cup. Like, there's no evidence for me.
The FA Cup, isn't it?
Pardon?
The FA Cup's so far away.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's miles away. It's like months away. But like, Farke's never rotated his squad. Like this, we'll talk about the side that will start against Preston, but there's no secret. Like, I won't go into too much detail, but the same side will start. Like, Farke won't change his side unless there is an injury or a suspension.
I think you'd always rather that, though.
I would, yeah, that's what I mean, though. Like, I don't think it's a situation where after 3 games, McCallum's going to come in for a bit. Like, we sort of saw it last year towards the Premier League season with, like, Jamal Lewis and stuff, but that was only because of, like, needs must. Like, Jamal Lewis was on his, like, last legs, and, like,
fatigue.
We haven't ever really seen, like, a great deal of rotation, especially when Norwich playing well and winning. Now, look, it's early days. We're in the first game week, so, like, don't want to get carried away, but if it carries on this way, then like I don't think there will be rotation. Obviously, if Norwich start performing badly, then other players will be given opportunities. But
let's kind of go to the game itself. I guess let's try kind of recover some events chronologically as we go through. Now, I guess on the whole, the game was very void of what I call clicker opportunities before our goal. So there's not a lot of like, oh my God, I can't believe he missed that kind of opportunities. It was very much like a lot of half chances, a lot of nearly moments where, like for example, the first time we really got away in the first half was Ollie skip on the edge of our own box. Nice little kind of quick feet in between a couple of the Huddersfield players. Hits the ball out to, I think, Dow, and then Dow plays through Ono Hernandez, who then goes through, dribbles all the way across the edge of the box before hitting it to the keeper. That kind of moment stuck out for me straight away, because that was our first viewing of just how much of a, I've got to be careful what I say here, but I want to say like a complete midfielder that Ollie Skip is. Just pure in the way that, and I said this in my kind of initial review of the game, but it's so nice to not have like an Alex Tete there who just wants to lump the ball forward, and actually have someone who is so composed on the ball that they can actually distribute it and benefit the offensive game in a defensive manner. And I know some people will say, well, it can be a bit more risky because you're playing on the edge of your own box. If you lose the ball, you're inviting more pressure. Yeah. But I don't really agree with that idea. I feel like, the way we play is always to play out the back. And the thought that you now have a midfielder that can do that, that really makes me think that we can maximise our opportunities going forward, especially with Skip in the team.
No, I mean, I thought Ollie Skip was really pleasing. I don't know if he necessarily had like an unbelievable game. If a defensive midfielder is ever going to have an unbelievable game, I'm not sure. Yeah. I think for a neutral, you'd probably watch that and go, you wouldn't really notice Skip in the side. But for Norwich fans, we've been used to seeing Tete in that midfield for ages, like pretty much as yeah. And Tete has value, and Tete's game has improved. But for Norwich fans to be able to see, especially in a side that's so like dominant or like sort of like
possession
required.
dominant.
Yeah, like we're so heavily on possession. Like for us to have a defensive midfielder who can intercept or win the ball and then be so comfortable on it to then just play a nice pass and like actually like have a few like have a dribble or two and like actually progress the ball forward. We spoke about it on our like match reaction video for Norwich Talk, and we were basically saying like to be able to like if that was Tetty, like he'd win it, God knows what to do with it, but probably pass it 5 yards to another player, maybe even backwards, and then we'd go forward and that opportunity to break and counter would be gone. Like Ollie Skip has the capability to win the ball and play it forward straight away, and that's really pivotal. I mean, his stats, like just looking at his stats, they don't really sort of stand out too much. Like apparently he had 1 interception and 1 tackle, like not anything like exceptional. But
That's what I kind of like.
he won 8 of his ground duels. Only 1 aerial duel, but like he's like sub 6 foot, isn't he? So you're probably not going to expect that. But 88% pass accuracy for me is the one. Like to be able to do that, you know, and actually be sort of like efficient with your ball play is really pivotal for me.
I think when you consider the area of the pitch that he's in and the especially in the championship as well, and like especially playing away from home, it's quite gritty for a lot of the game. You know, you got a lot of players in your face, whether it be the kind of number 10 for them, or even like number 8 or number 6 pushing upfield, and you're always under pressure on the ball, really. So to have a like 88%, I mean, it's I don't know what, like, for example, Alex Tete's was against Luton, for example, you know, but it just feels like he retains possession so much more better than what someone like Alex Tete would. I guess like moving on into, because in terms of the first half, there wasn't really too much. There was a chance for Huddersfield, which was kind of like the only chance of the game. I can't honestly remember the exact pronunciation of the guy's name. It was like Karoma or something along the lines of that.
Karoma, I think, yeah.
And I think he flicked it through the legs of Skip, ironically, and put one just past the post. And that was probably the best chance, I'd say, in the first half, because it was pretty close to going in. Just to kind of chat on that before we go into the second half. Defensively, how did you feel like we played in the first half? As a collective, not just like as a back four, as an entire team, as an entire unit, how do you feel like we defended?
Well, I suppose, like, speaking about the forward players in terms of how they pressed, I was a little bit disappointed. For me, like, Dow wasn't on his game, whatever reason. You know, you don't know what goes on. You don't know if he had he had an illness, or, you know, you never know, like, the human element of a footballer. So for me, he didn't look quite on his game, and in his pressing was a little bit amiss there. So I think in terms of pressing from the front, we probably could have done that a bit better.
Yeah.
But that'll take time. Like, Todd's never really been like the most competent presser, has he? So, but I suppose talking about the two central defenders, I think there's areas for improvement for both of them. Ben Godfrey got skinned a couple of times. Christoph Zimmerman failed.
Oh.
Yeah, no, that's what I was, yeah, like, so did Zimmerman. I think watching the game, I was more angry at Zimmerman and more disappointed at how he played. And then I watched the highlights back and I realised that actually Godfrey got done a couple of times as well. That needs to change. I've always felt like Christoph Zimmerman is always a little bit rusty first game back. Like, for me, the way, like, the physique he has and the maybe lack of pace, like, he has to be like at 100% to be sort of effective. And if he loses that, if he loses that sharpness, it affects him more than, say, it does a more technical operator, because their technical ability is so much more ahead of somebody like Zimmerman's. And look, I like Zimmerman. I don't necessarily have any expectation of him, and I've never expected like anything from Zimmerman, because he was a fourth tier German centre back. Like, we got on a free. What he's done has been exceptional. I think those two will start together again against Preston, but it'll be interesting to see sort of how long it will take, if it's, you know, if he ever sort of breaks into that Norwich City sort of centre back pairing of Ben Gibson. You know, if he can join maybe Ben Godfrey, I'd like to see that. But his first game back, so you'd like to think in a couple of games' time those two will improve, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt. They kept the clean sheet, which is the most important thing. But for me, it was just those areas down, the balls down like the channels, and like in those sort of areas when Godfrey and Zimmerman was like first to it, but then wouldn't make the challenge, and the same with Godfrey. Like Godfrey uses his pace a lot. It's what makes him a really good defender, but I felt like he should have made the challenge a little bit earlier sometimes.
I think you're definitely right with, and that's what I was going to say, in terms of why it appeared at the start that it was just Zimmerman's, because Zimmerman, once he makes some mistakes, just doesn't have the pace to get back and kind of correct that issue, you know. And I think the funniest part of it was there was one point where he miscontrolled the ball, and Koroma got in behind, and essentially, like, it was pretty much a one-on-one almost, but he was slightly to the right of the goal, and Ben Godfrey actually outran Christoph Zimmerman running back, which I guess just tells you everything. Is that essentially, your covering centre half has managed to run back and kind of prevent the opportunity from escalating because of a mistake you made, which is good on Godfrey's behalf. It's fantastic covering and good defending, but the warning signs were there. When you kind of let one of those through, and I guess that's the thing. If you're in the Premier League and you do that same mistake, and we spoke a couple of times about it with a couple of even half chances they had. Like, if that's in the Premier League, you're 1-0 down. And if that's
that was the
Raheem
thing.
Sterling running through, you're 1-0 down. And I think that
100%. I agree completely. Like Norwich was sort of like gliding through the game, almost like I didn't really feel like it's they're cruising, maybe is the right better word, but like I never really felt they got out of second gear. And there's a few times when like you thought Huddersfield were in, and then Norwich would just sort of like clean up after it. And those, we have to be a little bit more sharp in those moments, because we'll speak about Huddersfield in a moment, but we probably won't have. The games are going to get tougher, put it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess because there's no like individual moment, which there really was in the second half until the goal. Let's kind of speak about the goal itself. So obviously, it was very bizarre, because at the time of the goal actually happening, we kind of saw Richardson pass it, and you're instinctively just waiting for the goalkeeper to come out and clear it, and the goalkeeper just never come, and it was almost like a really weird one where you have no perception of really how far out the goalie is, because you can't see him on the camera. And to be fair, Pukki, I know a lot of it is down to the defender, but I still always praise the position of a striker and the not kind of a cleverness or intuition, but the ability to kind of pounce on it as quick as he did, because you still have to give the defensive team no chance that they can get that ball, and he was on it as quick as ever, and he took the ball forward. And unlike a couple minutes earlier where he had like a similar situation and thread through Kenny McLean a little bit too early and kind of stopped that attack short, he made the right pass. He kind of did like a little stutter. The pitch also, as you saw from every bloody player, falling over every 5 minutes. Christopher Schindler slipped over, and that kind of allowed the ball to be a little bit more kind of obviously paid through to Idah, who did what he needed. He stuck it away. He almost missed, but we'll let him off, and then got cleaned out afterwards as well.
No, that it's an interesting point about the Schindler attempt to tackle Pukki, because a lot of people were saying that Pukki faked it, like fainted it rather, and made Schindler fall in. Like, there probably is an element of that. Probably. I'm not convinced. Yeah, I'm not convinced that was entirely intentional by Pukki. That might be like really harsh, but it just, if that was a Pukki who was at the top of his game and he'd done that, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. But how many times have we seen Pukki hesitate to take the shot? And I think he was a little bit fortuitous with it. Like, look, nobody will know aside from Pukki if he meant to do that. People are saying that was intentional. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily think it was. The Idah finish was, I know he had an open goal, but that probably suggests like the instinctive nature we need to just hit it. Like we've said it first time, like don't hesitate, like just finish it.
And I think the
finish, the finish from Idah, like, was clever, because it was high, and like it would have avoided a defender trying to attempt to clear it.
And it's just nice to see him in that position though. Like he's a 19-year-old lad, and the minute that ball broke, it was, I'm getting to the box.
I've
That's the only place
I've
I'm
always
going.
like, this might be a bold statement. I think for where Idah is at in his career, like I think he is probably like, I think he's the most natural finisher we've got. Like
Oh, I would
I think
agree.
I think obviously like that's hard to say when Pookie scored like 29 goals in the championship, and you're probably thinking like what you're on about. But like Pookie offers us so many different elements to just goal scoring. Like I think Pookie, it's pretty evident Pookie was just having a purple patch. Like we're not going to see anything like that. Do I think Idah's going to get close to that? I even know, but like I just feel like Idah's main strength is that instinctive ability to score goals. And I think what Idah struggles at is he does get isolated a lot. Pookie likes to come deep and likes to maybe his movement is a little bit more intelligent in the way he sort of fashions out chances for himself. But yeah, I think, I mean, you sort of highlighted the point on Norwich Talk that maybe a pairing might be quite good for both of them actually. I
Well,
don't know.
you know what? I honestly think, and you could say, I mean, you could say it's bold. I don't really think it is, but I generally think that Adam Idah will outscore Pookie this year and will be our top goal scorer comfortably. Because
Comfortably.
I just think he will be given a lot more opportunity, and he will. The thing is, you highlighted a moment. You said if that's prime Pookie, maybe I'll kind of say yeah, you can hesitate it. If that's prime Pookie, it's a cross goal bottom corner, 1-0, easy. That's the difference. We haven't got prime Pookie, and I don't know if we're going to get prime Pookie. We might still get all the other attributes of his passing, his hold-up play, his runs in behind.
Yeah.
You're still going to get that because that's him. But are you going to get the same clinical, lethal striker that takes every chance that comes towards him? I don't know if you are.
No.
And on the other side of the spectrum, you've got this upcoming, confident Adam Idah. You know, he's now just got called up for his national team. He scored his first goal for the club. He's hungry for it. He wants it. And if he gets those opportunities and shows that he's the best finisher of the club, which I think from what I've seen early signs, I could say he is. All I can see is him taking that role, and whether they play together or not, which we'll get to later. I think he can outscore Pookie this year.
I don't know if you watched Farke's post-match interview, but he was basically saying that Idah, like Farke, like slaughtered Idah in the week because Idah wasn't 100% there with his training performances, and he supposedly like lost concentration and wasn't focused, and like they had quite, by the sounds of it, quite a like
Heat exchange,
serious chat. Like and it really surprised me. Like it came out because that I don't know if that would have came out if we would have drawn 0-0 or lost. Like I think it was one of those where like I think Farke probably forgot where he was and was like, I'm going to tell you a secret, and it's like, oh, I kind of like got to do it now. But then McGovern spoke to him apparently and was like, you need to repay the trust. And for me, for him to even be involved, when I hear that comment, for him to actually involve Idah, considering we also have John Hugill, was a really bold statement from Farke. And for him to actually bring him on ahead of John Hugill was fascinating. Now, whether I would presume that Idah is ahead of the pecking order in Hugill. Like Hugill's a really like experienced championship striker. I have my reservations, but we won't get into that. But I think Idah deserves, at least in my opinion, for sure, to be second choice behind Pookie. Maybe in a few games' time, he might surpass him. Like if Idah carries on scoring goals and Pookie doesn't, like it's early days, but there's no doubt that Idah will get the nod eventually. But it's evident what Farke's trying to do with Idah. You compare Idah coming through to somebody like a Max Aarons or a Ben Godfrey, and because there's an expectation that, you know, Idah scores goals and Idah's got talent, he is really trying to like squash it down and like just calm everything down around him. But it's probably enough about Idah, to be fair.
No, what I kind of want to touch on, the last thing about the game before we kind of look at individual performances a little bit more in depth is, and it's a little thing. I would class it at the end of the game, but similar to what you said about, you know, if it's 0-0, do you still hear about this? It's the fact that the referee for the first time again, this is kind of Farke's quote, for the first time ever, come up to him and apologize for 2 penalty mistakes or for wrong calls.
No,
I really, as much as I want to sit there and go, you know, it's probably honourable, in a way to the referee to be able to kind of admit his mistakes and say that to the manager. It's actually, I think, just the guilt that's he knows he's made the decisions, and to make himself kind of feel better because with one, he's gone over and been like, oh, thank God for that, because I made that mistake. And I know it's easy because you do make mistakes, and it's that kind of poison chalice, that kind of catch 22 of you don't want VAR, but you do want a good standard of refereeing, and you don't seem to really get that in the Championship. But there was there was 2 stonewall penalties. The handball, his arm is flailing up in the air. It's so obvious, and the second one, I mean, the whole game stopped. It was actually like the Huddersfield players knew it as well. And the thought that not even the linesman, who was close to the action as well as the ref, didn't call that. You've got to hope that referees at this level can make a simple penalty decision like that. I mean, he's cleaned him out off ball. There's literally nothing to suggest why it wouldn't be a penalty, and that's what I didn't really. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that, because I just thought it was just shambolic, really.
Just raises like a bigger point about VAR, and if like the preferences, like I think it's very easy to like during the game, like a few of us were sort of saying like, oh, maybe like VAR would be good, it wouldn't be good, but you can't just use it to fit the narrative of your own team. Like, I think I'm willing to probably accept that a few decisions will go amiss in the hope that we gain a few on our side, and actually the general enjoyment is there because look, I haven't seen like a VAR-esque replay of the goal, but I wouldn't be surprised if like somebody's like toe is offside or something. Doesn't mean that they're offside. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice a penalty or two and make, in the hope that one, we get some more our way, and also the general enjoyment of the game is better. Like, I didn't sit there and go, I wish VAR was in the game. It's football. Mistakes happen. It was annoying, but you'd like to think that maybe we'll get a few our way in a few games' time or something.
I think that's the thing. And, if we see the same referee, I'm sure he'll probably give us a couple of 50-50s our way, Let's kind of look at some individual performances. We not really go through the whole team unless you kind of want to, but I guess some more kind of notable ones. I want to start off with 2 players. We kind of highlighted this in our initial reaction, but it's Kieran Dow and Todd Cantwell. And now I just want to start off by saying, we've kind of already briefly spoke on it. We were quite pleasantly surprised with Todd's, I don't want to say attitude towards the game, but just he looked like he was quite up for it, and that he was quite ready for the kind of challenge ahead, and which was quite nice. And he, for the majority, I thought was very calm on the ball. I thought he was someone who looked a level at times above where he was playing, which was always quite nice, because you do sometimes worry that some of these players come down, they look exactly. I mean, this is so far has made Lucas Rupp look like probably one of the best players in the Championship, according to you, I'm sure.
That's why I included it.
But Kieran Dow, on the other hand, I didn't think he looked bad at all. I just think he looked a shade of the player that played against Luton. And I don't think that's necessarily his fault entirely. I definitely do think a little bit of the blame goes on to him. I just think you can't play both of them two together. And I just think because they both like to rotate in similar pockets of space, and they are pretty much the exact same player, but trying to almost free roam between 2 different positions, it just doesn't really work. I'd rather have like a Plaqueta or even 2 strikers on to kind of compensate for that. But what do you think about like how do you feel about that kind of comparison?
No, yeah, like initially my presumption was that Dowell and Todd like to operate in the same pockets of space, and I definitely think that there's merit to that point. But like I said, like, I don't know if this is because I'm a massive Kieran Dow fan and I'm trying to sort of give him the benefit of the doubt, but he didn't look like, you can sort of excuse somebody if like technically like their pass and their creation isn't coming off, but like when like their pressing isn't entirely there and they don't really look like they've got sort of like 100% fitness and they get taken off early, you just wonder maybe if like he wasn't 100% ready in whatever sort of like I suppose like way that is, like if that's fitness or just like personal, I don't know. Like I'm just sort of like presuming, but yeah, Dow wasn't at his best. Dow will have better games than that, and it didn't really help us. That sort of like we were all hyping up to our mates that like Kieran Dow is pretty much like Kaka, like peak Kaka. So when he sort of puts in a performance like that, it's like go on, Kieran, like we sort of hyped you up here. But on the flip side, that Todd, yeah, like we were both pleasantly surprised with Todd. To be fair, we shouldn't be, because Todd is talked about in the bracket of some of the most exciting English attacking talent there is. So, like, Todd didn't set the world alight, but I just didn't have any, especially on that right-hand side, I didn't expect much from him in the Championship. Like, we know that he isn't as productive in this league. Well, we thought so anyway.
Yeah. Because
of his lack of physicality. Look, there's a lot of time left in this transfer window. If Todd wants to be, I'm sure if Todd gets an opportunity to move to the Premier League, he'll snap it up with both hands. But I mean, I don't know. Like, Norwich have a lot of quality in that area. Not all of them are going to stay. Now, whether that is Emi Buendia and Todd Cantwell getting poached, or whether that is Daniel Sinani and Josh Martin going on loan, I don't know. But like, they're not all going to remain here. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what happens in that regard.
Well, I don't want to sound like a pessimist either in the way that kind of anticipating a sale for Todd Cantwell, but I would rather he plays the first 5 games at a 8+ level, and then we sell him because it raises his value and he wants to leave. Then he sits here, doesn't really play, and then just gets sold for kind of an underprice. So
I agree.
That's the thing you've got to remember as well.
My worry, I cannot foresee a situation where Kieran Dow, Emi Buendia, and Todd Cantwell are all here.
No, I agree.
And obviously, Kieran Dow isn't here to either be sold or go out alone. Like, that's silly. So it does leave it to the other two. In all honesty, I'm not fussed which one of those goes. I'm sorry if you're listening to this and that makes you angry, but one of those probably will be, like, Norwich probably will sell one of them. I cannot foresee how. I don't see the point. Like, if you keep Kieran Dow, Emi Buendia, and Todd Cantwell, you're always going to have one on the bench. Like, we need depth and we need cover, but you don't need cover to that extent because their values are just going to diminish. Like, I don't know what you think, but
I definitely think if you were to give me the option, I would keep Emi Buendia every day of the week. It's worth noting that, and this is per NCFC numbers, it was the first win in 28 months without Emi Buendia on the pitch. That is insane. And
was that? I presume that's probably before he even arrived, right? Or not?
No, I think this is.
So I don't think we've won a game without Emi Buendia.
Not whilst he's been here. So it would have been whilst he's been here, I'm imagining. Yeah, or before he come correct. Yeah. So you're right. But that's crazy. That's absolutely mental. That 28 months with one player, and I think that's the thing for me is that, of course, if Emi goes and Todd stays, that's still such a quality, player in Todd Cantwell to kind of have in your team. But if I'm Norwich right now and the possibilities there, I think Todd Cantwell will get sold for more than Emi Buendia, because I think Emi Buendia doesn't fit that kind of English quota. He's a couple of years older as well, I think. I think Todd's like 21, 22.
If Todd carries on playing the way like he did against Huddersfield, like, he's doing nothing to harm his chances of getting a move. Like, I think me and you are probably, like, it sounds silly as if we're trying to, like, we want to sell Todd. It's not that, like, I don't want Todd Cantwell to be here, but you have to think about the bigger picture and in terms of his value, like, is he realistically going to sign another deal to extend the 2 years or less than 2 years he now has on this deal? Yeah. Like, Todd Cantwell's value is never going to be this high. I think there probably is an element that he is in the shop window and that he is trying to impress because, he probably does need that move, but yeah, I think Todd is probably a little bit more dispensable than Emi. And I think we could get 20 million for Todd, 100%.
I also don't think we've replaced Emi yet. I think we've replaced Todd with Dow, but I just don't think we've replaced Emi Buendia yet. And
but maybe that's what Josh Martin's come through for.
But I don't think we'd bargain with that and sell our most creative asset probably in my lifetime. And I know it's bold with players like Wes Hoolahan and James Maddison coming through, but I think, productivity-wise, he's probably one of the most creative players I've ever watched. And to kind of rest out on the shoulders of a 19-year-old player coming through the youth setup
Oh
who's
no,
had a
100%.
good pre-season, but whereas for me, I'm thinking, all right, Todd Cantwell's a clear direct replacement in Kieran Dow, literally almost like an identical like for like player, similar age and everything. And the thought that in the long run we could replace a 20 million, 25 million Todd Cantwell with a 2 million Kieran Dow or whatever is mental again. But I think again, it's just that kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of quality performances now from Todd prior to a sale later on in the window. That's what wouldn't surprise me. But I guess to kind of look at some other individual performances, we've kind of already spoken about Ollie Skip, but what about someone like Max Aarons at right back? I don't know what you thought about him at all, but how do you feel Max Aaron's fair? Because obviously his first game back in the squad for since his back-to-back appearances for the under-21s, which is always good because it's another level up, and it's that kind of elite group of English footballing talent coming through. So it's always nice to kind of have one of your boys feature in there. But I mean, how did you think he fared against Huddersfield?
No, I thought it was good. I think there's areas for improvement. Max Aarons is a weird one because obviously we do have Sam Barham and Bali Mumba like waiting now. Whether we can rely on those two for a full season of football is another matter entirely. But I mean, I think Max will stay primarily because like I don't think it'll do him any harm like another season of Championship football. Like it'd be really good to be able to build that back for like consistently, maybe even adding Gibson in there for Zimmerman if we're being a little bit critical. But I'd really like to see a consistent back four / back five really. And yeah, like I think Aaron's didn't have the best game of his life, but I thought he looked like he was too good for that level. You're hoping that he pushes on, and because he's obviously improved considerably. Now what we want to see is maybe a little bit more, not like maybe being a little bit more aggressive in the second third. Like we don't really play with a right side midfielder like we do on the left. So Aaron's is that sort of predominant attacking output, and Ollie Skip sort of covers him behind when he goes forward. So like Max Aaron's was fine, but like I say, you just don't know where these players are at in terms of if they want to be here or not.
I think that's the thing.
You hope that like, should no bid be made, that they are happy to pay for another season because they've signed the contract. We gave the opportunity. But yeah, like you just don't know what will happen. Like someone could come in, like Wolves just could come in and pay 25 million from him and be gone. Like that is just the reality of it, unfortunately.
Well, I think it's worth saying with someone like Max Aarons is that even without playing like your best game, you still look like you're like another level above the opposition you're playing. And I think that was a nice thing, is that even the way he bombed forward, you can probably hear my dogs in the background. Even the way he bombed forward down the wing, I have shades back to him versus like Sheffield Wednesday away the year we went up, where he kind of made that almost 90-yard run before setting up Pookie. Like I think it's there. It's just rediscovering that confidence to go, yeah, I can run down the pitch and create a bit more and have that freedom, because there's going to be the space in this league, and I know I'm better than the opposition I'm playing, as opposed to last year where it's almost like, wow, I'm lining up against Robertson today on the other flank, and he's this player that I've watched, and I feel like as much as players don't say it and they still have that desire for it, I still feel like that has a definite impact on it. And that kind of we need that mentality back of almost like, okay, we are the best players in this position in this league, and players are going to go and have that reaction to me when I play them. And I think I guess that's kind of all I want to say about Max Aarons, but I feel like that's the thing I like the most, is that they can have their like 5 out of 10 games, 6 out of 10 games, and we can still keep a clean sheet and win. And that's a nice thing for me. I definitely want to talk about Javi Quintilla next, because I kind of have mixed emotions on him. I feel like he didn't do anything wrong at all. I just didn't feel like there was anything I went like, wow, what a player. And I know that's harsh because it's a left back and it's 90 minutes and, you know, you're seeing one angle of how the game's being played. And I think that's why I like watching players in person, because you can kind of look at them as a player and, you know, I guess analyze them a bit more from what they do in the full 90 minutes as opposed to what the camera is showing you. But what I will say, which is really nice, is I thought he was fantastic at corners. It's going to
Yeah,
sound petty, but I feel like even Emi Buendia, the amount of times he would hit the first man on a corner would drive me crazy.
it's a good like indication of where he is with his like technical competency, I suppose. Like we spoke about it. Sorry to allude to it again, but the match review on Norwich Talk, and like Norwich's left back is never going to be as productive or as in the limelight as the right back. Now the reason for that is because on the left, Norwich operate with a more natural wide player, whether that be O'Neill, Plaqueta, or Josh Martin. Norwich, I know we saw Todd there previously, but that was only because Todd just like turned into some sort of god.
Yeah.
Norwich play with a natural wide player, and there isn't much space to overlap and be as productive there. So I think the issue is that you know, that there isn't as much opportunity to sort of overlap and stuff. So I think he was promising. He was fairly comfortable on the ball. He's actually got a 7.5 rating on SofaScore, which is probably a little bit generous. That makes him the man of the match. But yeah, like he had a good game.
I guess kind of what I want to go on to next is who you felt that your man of the match was. Just because I think no one stood out, but at the same time, there was quite a few players which I thought I classify as having a good game. Now, before I say who I had my man of the match, I kind of want to hear who you had first. So who was your man of the match for the Huddersfield game?
I don't know. Like I can't pick really. Like I don't.
See,
like I say,
I could quite easily say mine.
Who's yours?
I would have my man of the match as Oliver Skipp.
No, because the like Oliver Skipp. The only reason is because of what we've seen before in that position. Like if you like Oliver Skipp didn't do anything. Like Oliver Skipp like played well. Like he was good. Like but he like I don't know how you can say he's man of the match because like, I don't see what he done that you wouldn't expect. Like Norwich have been so poor in that position in recent years. To see something a little bit different, I think it's just a little bit biased in like that regard.
I definitely agree that it's definitely probably subconsciously impacted by the thought of what that position has been like before. But I would still definitely say, distribution wise, I thought he was fantastic. I thought whenever I have a central defensive midfielder or a number 6, the way that I judge them is by how much I notice them. And when I don't notice them a lot, that usually means they've had a good game. You know, I don't want my centre defensive midfielder to be running 30 yards with the ball and losing it, you know, or I want them to be, you know, doing the right thing, whether that be knocking it past a few players and, you know, passing it out to someone else to then carry the ball forward. I feel like he was instrumental to starting a lot of the counter attacks that we had. Okay, nothing come from those, but like he still started that movement. I feel like he made so many interceptions. We sat there when we were watching the game. We went.
He made one
everything
apparently.
Well,
apparently he made one.
Stats wise, obviously, like I guess you can't argue, but the
made one
times in the game that he would, in my eyes, intercept the ball or force over, I guess, like a turnover of possession. I feel like that's why I have him as my man of the match. It's not for what the paper, you know, stats say. It's more so for it was a young lad who hasn't got much first team football experience coming into a team that he's played only a couple of games in pre-season with and standing out as a player which was more than competent in that position and in that role and in that league in that one game so far, because that's the only sample we can go off. He looked like the real deal for that number 6 role for what Norwich's type of football is.
He did, yeah. I just like I honestly I can't pick them a man of the match. I think the candidates probably are Xavi Quintilla, Skipp, Todd, and Timu, but like I've all actively sort of like criticised them in some part. Well, just because of like his but again, like I can't I can't say Timo Pukki was man of the match when I just said, did he really mean that assist? Like, that's not really fair. So I can't really pick one. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like, that's a complete cop out. I think, again, like the one that stood out to me is Todd Cantwell. But again, like, I can't sit here and say Todd Cantwell was man of the match when I just, like, because I'm just probably being biased in my surprise. Like, just like I just sort of like questioned why you went for Skip because we hadn't seen anything. By me saying Todd Cantwell's man of the match is probably more a reflection of actually how surprised I was at his performance. So I probably will say Todd, but I'm not like sort of like half reluctantly, I suppose. Like, I'm being quite,
I guess that's kind of what I'd like to hear from people in the comments as well, is who is your man of the match? Because clearly it's something which we can't actually agree on, which is always nice. I guess let's kind of turn our head forward to the game coming up on the weekend. We've got Preston North End at home. Wasn't the first home game we played them last year? No, it was the second one because we played West Brom first, I think. So
yeah, it was that weird Tetty goal, wasn't it?
Well, we literally give him. It was probably his worst game of his life until that moment where he scored, and then Pukki scored his first goal as well. Interest. I think it was the first time ever Pukki hasn't scored with his first shot on target. He had a snapshot at like the 93rd minute.
It was. Yeah,
there's his first time in 8 seasons that he hasn't scored with his first shot on target. Read into that what you will. So on the weekend they lost 1-0 at home to Swansea. Now, I guess as two outsiders looking in, Preston, in my eyes, have always been, especially under Alex Neil, since obviously because we kind of know exactly what he's about. They've always been, I'd say, top 10 championship side. They're always someone that, and even looking back to the campaign that we went up, they were the only team that beat us in probably the last half of the season, and there was only 3 teams since that Leeds game that beat us or something like that. So, they were one of few which managed to and convincingly beat us as well. I think it was 3-1 on the night, but it was a really poor performance from us. I think we kind of can anticipate how they play just from having Alex Neil as our coach, and we can kind of look at obviously the result they've had this weekend. I would say Swansea is quite a good team, and I would expect them to be in or near about the kind of playoff picture. So, I'm not going to really take too much from the 1-0 loss. And again, I don't want to kind of go into too much on Preston because I honestly don't know too much about Preston. I don't want to kind of pretend that I do. But as an opposition, knowing that it's going to be a lot more of a harder test than what Huddersfield kind of gave us, how do you think we're going to fare? Because obviously we've got to take into consideration we're going to be at home. And I know it's not that same kind of, you're at home, you've got your fans, but there is still that element of, it's the kind of, it's the kind of normality of what you're used to, and whether it be the pitch, the dimensions, the changing rooms. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think it's still mentally, it can play a big impact playing in a place where you're kind of used to and comfortable playing. So, I mean, what do you think? How do you think we're going to fare? Is it like an early kind of prediction of how things are going to go? Are you quite confident going into it? How you kind of assess this one?
Yeah, like I am confident. Like I think in where Norwich are in terms of the development with this set of players, I think they're still quite early. Like there's still, like Norwich are a confidence team. Norwich rely heavily on confidence, so this will probably be a really good week of training, and I fancy Norwich to go there and build on it. And I just hope, like, even if the performances aren't there, like for Norwich just to pick up a couple of wins and some really positive performances will just help them in the long run. And then I think the performances will start to come. It'll be a different test. I think like the possession stats, it was even basically for Huddersfield Norwich. I think that won't be the case for Preston. It'll be really interesting to see sort of how they fare in terms of having us being like the dominant side in terms of possession. Like we will dominate the ball and probably create a lot of chances. I can't really see how they're going to hurt us. Preston are a well-drilled side under and Alex Neil, but you've just got to hope that like we've got that game under the belt, like everything, like there's a lot of positives to take and that we can build on it. Another full week with the lads and stuff. Like I sound like I work for the club, don't I? Yeah. But you just like obviously like that time on the training pitch has been few and far between, and that we've won a game, our centre forward scored, and the other one set up, and we've got a clean sheet. So like, there's a lot of positives to take, and you just hope that they build on it and that we see a promising performance. What we don't want to see is arrogance. What we don't want to see is a presumption that we'll win. We're gonna have to turn up. We're gonna have to be a lot better, do a lot more on a game. You know, we're gonna have to be a lot more sharper and stuff. Look, Tim Krul didn't get tested at all, so that'll be something that will have to be thought about. But look, I'm confident going into the game. I wouldn't say I'm overly confident, but I think Norwich proved that, like, the squad that we have, like, we should be towards that end of the table, and Norwich should be the favourites going into pretty much every game. How that translates, I don't know really.
I don't really have any issue with the confidence side of it going in, because I think that it's worth noting that for the majority, it's a very similar core to what we went up with. And I think that the one reason why we kind of almost stormed the league is because we had this mentality of, you know, one game at a time. You know, there was something to clearly fight for. And I still think that fight and that hunger is there. And I don't think, obviously there is a level of arrogance, I think, as a player that you have naturally. And that's not like a bad thing necessarily. I just think that the way that Farke has kind of instilled that kind of culture and mentality into the players, I don't really have any worries about that kind of arrogance, you know. And I think that's kind of like something that I take, you know, with a bit of pride in the way that we kind of go into the games that we play. I would definitely say that I think playing at home is going to be very beneficial to, again, like that kind of possession-based football that we're used to seeing. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how we can try and break down a team that is just prepared to probably for the majority sit back and kind of absorb the pressure. And I'm actually quite excited almost because, you know, I think watching us play at home quite often in that Project Restart was really tough, and it wasn't the most enjoyable experience. And I think that I'm actually quite excited for once to kind of watch us off the back of a win, try and go back to back. I mean, when was the last time we had back-to-back wins? I mean, we didn't do it in the Premier League at all. So, you know, I couldn't even tell you the last time we did it. And that's the honest truth.
Maybe, to be fair, I'm just thinking we beat Villa and then Blackburn, didn't we? So that'd probably be it. The last game of the Championship
feels like an
season.
eternity ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I guess to kind of look at the team, because I think there's probably a couple of different points that we want to make here. Now, I just want to start off by saying, if we start off with our preferred team and then what we actually think, we might be able to get some graphics potentially on screen, but if not, try and use your imaginations. What I'd say is I'd say, and this is what I prefer, right? Now, you got to strike that fine line between that reality of it and the kind of, you know, what you want. There's two different lineups in my head. One lineup involves pretty much the exact same team, 4-2-3-1. You replace Kieran Down with Emi Buendia because he's back from suspension, I believe. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's my realistic team. Is the exact same team you saw, but Emi Buendia comes in for Kieran Dow. Kieran Dow moves to the bench. Great player to bring on late game, or you know, replace Todd. That's a fantastic substitution potentially there as well. What I would love to see is not like a 4-4-2, because I don't think we'll ever see that. We've saw him play a diamond before, but I'd love to see Pukki and Idah play alongside each other. It will not happen, and I know that. But seeing those two link up and seeing the almost Pukki crying out for that second man to have next to him, to almost regain his confidence, and at least while he's not maybe firing on all cylinders, he's still contributing to the offensive threat that we have. And I feel like when he's up there as a lone striker, he's not really doing that, because unless his hold up is literally perfect and he's able to bring the players in, and even then, the one time in that game before that he really had that opportunity, he drove forward, passed it to Kevin McLean way too early, and then the attack broke down. So that's what I would say. I would say realistic, Buendia in for Dow, no other changes, and I think you'll probably say very similar. What I'd love to see is for some kind of two up top, maybe a diamond system. But that's a very bold prediction.
I'm going to go sensible, and I'm probably for the first time
after last week.
I'm going to play it safe. I think you keep it the same. Now, okay. I think you don't change a thing. I don't even think, even if Emmy's back, like, I don't think he comes. I think he comes on the bench probably
But
for
I say, does he
Hugo.
make the bench? Yeah. For
I think
Hugo,
he comes on
okay,
for the
yeah.
bench. I'd drop Hugo. I don't really see the point of having Hugo and Idah, to be honest. No, I don't.
Yeah, no,
not
I
really.
understand that. I understand that.
But for me, like, my thinking is, like, this is the first time we've won a game of football in X amount of months. This is, like, a lot of new players. A lot has changed. Like, don't mess about with it. Like, we've just won. We've kept a clean sheet. Stick with the same side. Allow them to work together during the week. Allow for other players to realise that, okay, I'm gonna have to work my off because you know, I'm not getting in this side. That's the sort of culture that you want. If people are going to sulk, if people are going to be like, oh, I'm not getting an opportunity, Farker needs to be able to say, well, look where we are in the league. That's the sort of thing that we want here. If Ben Gibson never plays a minute of football for Norwich City Football Club, which is unlikely, it's a good thing because Norwich will probably be top of the league.
Well, we better be top of the league.
Yeah, or close. They're on thereabouts. But I think for me, there's nothing like Buendia and Idah would be, and Plaqueta probably will be like my three options off from the bench, depending on how the game goes. But like, just stick with it. And if after an hour it's not, or if it's not going right, you can bring on a Buendia, you can bring on an Adam Idah, you can bring on a Plaqueta. 100%. Like, did I not say starting?
Oh yeah, 10. One change to the squad.
Like, just to clarify, right? I just want to talk about my decision to put Rupp in my starting 11 because, like, I guess I was trying to somewhat keep some sort of continuity from the Luton game, and I was actually impressed with Lucas Rupp. I actually think Lucas Rupp played better against Luton than McLean did against Huddersfield.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you just before it's like a last thing? I feel like after his cameo role, there is not a good chance, but I feel like there's a fair opportunity to kind of say that Adam Idah deserves to start over Timu Pukki against Preston. Bearing in mind his record against Preston, the last time he faced them and started. Mm-hmm. I know it's a different setting, but it's pretty much the same. Well, a very similar side. It's only a year ago they kind of played. Would you start Adam Idah?
Like, you're probably gonna be shocked. I'd say no, and the reason is, like, after that Farker interview, I just can't see it. Like, if we're like drawing or chasing the game and you bring on Idah and he scores again, like, I still think you just stick with it because there's a formula that's working. Like, until you need to start Adam Idah, like, I do think I'm being really sensible here. I'm actually like trying really hard. I'm resisting really hard, but like, I think the sensible option is to just stick with it until it's not working, and then you change it. Like, that's a real boring, like, perception and interpretation of it, but like, I just think that is probably the sensible option.
Okay, I'm definitely interested to see how this game goes because I guess from my standpoint, it's like a last point. I definitely think whatever happened didn't work until Adam Idah come on, and that's why I was intrigued to kind of find.
If we had got the penalty that the referee even thought we deserved, which is a massive thing. Like, I think 1-0 is a fair result. I think 2-0 or 3-0 probably would have flattered us because I don't think we were good enough. But we created a clear-cut chance for Adam Idah. We should have had 2 penalties, and to be honest, like, there was a few Onel Hernandez chances. Kenny McLean had a few sort of snapshots, like
snapshots.
Yeah, like, but 1-0 was a fair result. How that goal came is irrelevant. Let's just move on, I think.
Lovely. Well, I think that's probably a good place to kind of leave things. We've kind of spoke about quite a lot in this podcast, and of course there is kind of 2 ways or multiple ways of listening to this. You're either listening to this audio on Spotify or Apple Music. If you have enjoyed the podcast, if you're happy to either download it on Spotify or give it a rating on Apple Podcasts, and if you are on YouTube, of course, please interact with us in the comments, or via our Twitter, which is at the Revere End Pod. I think at the Revere End.
Just at the Revere End. Yeah. You should know this, Alfie.
Yeah, you can tell who does the Twitter, and also our Instagram.
Don't say that. I'll get loads of hate.
But if you want to just have a chat with us or anything like that, because obviously, as we've learned, there's plenty of things which people can agree or disagree with, which is the lovely thought of kind of sporting and opinions as well. Obviously, please kind of either message in the comments or message us on Twitter. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like and feel free to subscribe for us as well. There's plenty more stuff coming, whether it be podcasts or short videos or anything. We've got a lot in the works, so there's a lot of exciting things to come. So until the next time, we'll see you later.